Hello, friends. Welcome. Salo, Mason, Abio, YouTube channel. The foundation of this great nation, the United States of America, was laid upon the lives of those who gave their very lives to create this nation. That being all of the soldiers and fighters who lost their lives for our freedom. And we have been at war ever since. And war is inevitable. It comes in many shapes and sizes. Wars and conflicts can be everything from a world war to a territorial dispute to the Hamas takeover of the universities this past summer in 2024, the BLM riots in 2020 and 2021, to World War I, World War II, of course the Civil War being the most atrocious act ever because it was Americans upon Americans. For a good cause, though. The freedom of Americans. Ironic, isn't it? So there will always be a mind out there that believes it deserves more than it does. Enter people like Putin, for example, or Xi Jinping, you know, the world leaders who do not lead by example, do not lead by fairness and justness. They lead by threats and fear and other horrible things. And they believe that they have a right to everything. And we can't stop these individuals, these governmental bodies or oligarchs or whoever they are. We can't stop them from coming after us or any other nation. We don't have that ability. But what we can do as a nation is we can make sure that our military is strong and robust and prepared at all times to take on these conflicts as they arise. And yes, we are responsible to aid our international allies when they too are being threatened. You know, in World War I and World War II, we heeded the call, and we did go and we did defend European nations for the sake of their freedom and for the sake of avoiding communism or what the atrocities to the Jewish people. I mean, there were real reasons why we did, but we can't be there to help them if we don't have a strong, robust military. After the draft was put to bed, our forces were 100% voluntary. You join if you wanted to. So recruiters had to look in different areas. Because when you are drafted, you are told, guess what? We're going to train you to be a killer. We're going to train you to survive in the worst circumstances ever. And we're going to tell you that you're going to take these guns and you're going to kill people. You're going to blow them up. You're going to do things that you were born and raised to believe are not only abhorrent, but will get you in jail or in some cases the death penalty if you do. But all bets are off because now that you're a soldier, you can go ahead and kill people while you're here if that's what's required of you. So there was a real black and white mentality. But now that it's voluntary, there's no draft anymore. Recruiters have had to look for other ways to encourage Americans to join. So their propaganda has moved toward saving the world, serving your country, preserving democracy to, well, we can give you free education, we'll give you a down payment for a house when you get back. While you're here, you and your family, you'll get free medical care, and you'll get, base housing and different things that you would normally have to pay for in the outside world, but you're not going to now. It's not going to be enough to support you. Of course, you're going to end up having to get food stamps and all kinds of other things, but, we'll give you a little bit. But you get to travel. It's exciting. You'll learn new languages. You'll get to do all this crazy stuff. And so they have to appeal to the young minds in order to get them to join. Unfortunately, when a young person, decides to join the military for the education and the excitement and travel, new experiences, some really badass skills, the GI Bill, I believe it's what they call when you get a down payment for a house. Those reasons are really good, but they're not the right reasons to join the military. You should be joining the military to become part of the greatest force on earth that will save the world when you are called upon to do so, to protect Americans and American land with your very life. That's not happening anymore. So free Americans are raised to believe and told absolutely that you cannot murder another human being. If you do, you could be sentenced to death, or you could spend the rest of your life in a prison, because you are not allowed to kill people. It's the worst thing you can do. But then they join the military. And the military has a whole different attitude about it, but they're a softer, gentler military, because in the years of, that political term, that ugly political term of wokeness, the military has to be more concerned about people's feelings. They have to adjust the physical requirements depending on, your gender and whatnot. They have to protect and preserve women in the field, which is a little different than men in the field. They have to take into account and protect individuals from retribution from their bunkmates if they are, out of the norm somehow. And they should be doing that all the time anyway, but that should not be their main function. Their main function should be to train our military to be the greatest, strongest force against anti-democracy, terrorists, anything that threatens the homeland. But it's not happening. So you get these young minds and they join the military, and they probably join the military for all the wrong reasons, and then they get sent to war. A lot of people struggled with Iraq. They came back, PTSD, which is common, back in World War II, they called it shell shock, but it was there nonetheless. So you take these minds and you send them, you lure them into signing up to the military for all these really great perks first. And we're going to train you to kill people second. You shouldn't do that. Because when they are faced with this problem of having to kill or be killed, and ordered by your government to do so, or else, it goes against what you were born and raised to believe, and what your government told you was going to happen when you joined up. They said you were going to travel, you were going to be educated, you were going to get skills, you were going to learn new languages, you're going to meet a lot of people, you were going to get all these perks. But you might get sent to war and you might have to kill people. Unfortunately, when those individuals that survive those conflicts come back home, there is an inner conflict, a social conflict, a conscious conflict that the military isn't resolving, and that might be so deep within these individuals that they don't even realize what's happening. But some of them come back frustrated, scared, unsure, angry, unable to use those skills that they learned to apply to civilian jobs in the civilian world. They're horrified. They're guilty because they did something that goes against everything that they had been born and raised to believe. And they're stuck. They're angry. They're confused. They feel disconnected, disenfranchised from the rest of America's civilian life, if you will. And that anger, that confusion, that self-loathing that might be happening will seep out and find its way into places such as social media, where known terrorist organizations such as Hamas and Al-Qaeda and, all of those monstrous people, they disguise themselves as legit, innocuous pages on Facebook and, TikTok and Instagram, and they suck you in and they lure you in. And they start to groom you. And they start to feed on that anger you have toward your nation because you were told that killing is not allowed, and then you join the military for the Great Bennies and then given a gun and told to go kill somebody. And I know that's really, very simplistic, I know. But being a civilian, my perspective is when people go around scratching their heads going, oh my God, how could that guy have blown up New Orleans or Vegas? What the hell? Homegrown terrorists, where'd they come from? How did they get radicalized? Why? What would happen? They were in the military. They're Americans. So are you saying that Americans are immune to being radicalized? I hope not, because that's completely not the case. Their skin color, their gender, their nationality, none of that has anything to do with the fact that this grotesque inner conflict drives them to the organizations that will bore into their minds and start grooming them and radicalizing them. They all end up hating America. So who's the fault for this? Well, our government for allowing our military to become too soft and too weak. And I know that sounds ideological. I know it sounds a little simplistic. But when our military becomes more concerned with feelings, image marketing, luring people into recruiting them, not under false pretenses, but, maybe not under the right pretenses, When the priorities of the Pentagon become more social and political than military, then we are setting our soldiers up for radicalization by terrorists. When we tolerate universities being destroyed and people being taken hostage and on campuses and everything being turned upside down by terrorist organizations that we vowed not to tolerate, we're sending the wrong messages to those that we are training to quite possibly lay their lives on the line for our nation. My hope for the new administration is that they are unapologetically fierce about protecting our homeland. They're going to protect that homeland by culling the nonsense out of the Pentagon, by getting people into the Pentagon that understand what you're signing up for, that aren't going to be more concerned with gender politics and get down to the business of getting our military back to being the killing force that it needs to be. Because we can't control the Putins and the Xi Jinpings of the world. We can't control these things. There's been a lot of hype about using relating the border to war. And it is. We're being invaded by people that were not invited here, that are here illegally. Some, like the gangs that Tren Aragua, they're seizing property, they're beating and torturing Americans, they are terrorizing people. They have come here and they have begun a war against the American way of life. And we have to put a stop to it. Whether we like it or not, a kinder, gentler America is not a successful America. A kinder, gentler America is a weak America, vulnerable to our enemies. And those enemies can be anything from the Hamas terrorists at our colleges and universities to BLM rioters to illegals shoving their way across the border. And it's not just Mexican people that are coming over. There's people from the Middle East and China and all over the world that are coming here. The vast majority are military age single men. And they're not here to join our military, become American, and fight for us. No. They're here to get the benefits that the Biden administration has so graciously afforded them. So they're coming here for the wrong reasons. All of these tens of millions of people that have come over the border are not good people. They're not all trying to get political asylum. If you think about how many people are populating these individual nations, these tiny pockets of countries, the math doesn't add up. And I can't add 2 and 2 twice and get the same answer. So if math doesn't add up for me, you know it's got to be pretty skewed, right? The fact being that war is war. And when someone blows themselves up or blows up New Orleans or Vegas or whatever they want to do, it's got nothing to do with their gender, their name, or their color. So people like Joy Reid, who is a race-baiting bitch, who tried last week on one of her shows to bait her guests to say that Americans are equating the terrorist attacks of January 1st to the border, and they're so sick of hearing about the border. Oh, yeah. But then one of her guests said, well, he was a man of color and he had a foreign name. He didn't have a foreign name. He was American. Doesn't matter what his name is. Your name could be Jujubee. Doesn't matter. If you're American, you're American. But they were race baiting. They were trying to make it out to be a racial thing. And that this guy was a victim of racial unrest. No, he wasn't. He was American, born and raised, educated. He joined our military. He came back from the military conflicted. He came back from the military feeling disenfranchised and abandoned by his country. And those sinister terrorist organizations that troll the internet 24/7, looking for the right keywords, the right emojis, the right clicks in Google. What are you searching? What are you doing? And they slither into the lives of those very hurt, sick, confused, conflicted Americans who served their country well. And they're starting with, how bad America is and so on and so forth. And they're baiting them, and they're grooming them, and they're brainwashing them into believing that America is bad. And when you're feeling bad about your country, if somebody starts talking to you about how bad your country is, it's just going to become exaggerated, inflated, okay? So to Joy Reid and all of the race-baiting bitches out there, fuck you. We will never get over racial conflict if we continue to have race baiters and give them a platform and a voice and a paycheck to keep racial conflict, racial war alive and well in our nation. So shame on them. These men, these two terrorists on January 1st, were born and raised American. They both volunteered to serve in our military. They served at the same base, actually. I don't know if it was the same time or anything, but the same base. I hope that the government's looking at that. Because there could very well be groomers on those bases. Bad people who shouldn't be on those bases that are on those bases that have slithered their way in, and they're working for one of our enemies. And we can't keep giving all of our military might and dollars and equipment to other nations, handing it over to nations that aren't trained on how to use it, that have no right to have our stuff, and say, here, this is America, your ally helping you. That's like giving $20 to your kid and saying, go down to the store and get yourself some lunch. What are they going to get? Soda, chips, candy. They're not going to get the boiled egg and the carrots and the sandwich and things that they need. No, they're not. It's the same thing when you give underdeveloped nations, developing nations, second, third world nations, or terrorist nations, all of your goods. So I'm happy that we have a new administration coming in that understands that our very lives, our freedom, our ability to get up and walk freely through our lives each and every day depends on our military. And that they are going to seize the opportunity to get things back in order. Don't give someone a gun and tell them they're not allowed to shoot and kill people. It doesn't work that way. So these terrorists, they're not victims of anything other than a poorly managed military who allowed them to be brainwashed and radicalized, who allowed them to be recruited and join the military for all the wrong reasons, and then send them off to war to kill people, and then dump them back off here and tell them, okay, now you're back to killing people is illegal. You can't do that. They need more help, more mental health support, protection. But these terrorists, this was nothing about race. We're not calling them terrorists because they were men of color. We're calling them terrorists because they were radicalized individuals working on behalf of a terrorist organization who went and blew up themselves and people and buildings. That's why they're terrorists. Look up the definition of terrorist. Nowhere in the definition of terrorist, Joy Reid, race baiting bitch, terrorists are defined as people of color with foreign names. It doesn't say anything about their gender, their color, nothing. But where we are at fault is for letting our military become what it is. So I'm looking forward to the next 4 years of getting our military back to where it needs to be. Back to business. I'll feel safer going to sleep at night. And you should too. And is it going to hurt? It's going to hurt. There's going to be a lot of moving parts, a lot of changes. Change is uncomfortable. It hurts. There's going to be a lot of misinterpreted actions. There's going to be a lot of angry people. But at the end of the day, you may not like what the military does, but I guarantee you, if a battalion of foreign soldiers came running down, taking over your Main Street, USA, you would want that soldier, a highly trained killing machine, next to you to help keep you and your children alive, rather than someone whose priorities are more toward self as opposed to country. Just think about it. Give me your comments. And until next time, do good and be good.